their ascent post-January is shocking, and I also think it's something that's one of those we've got to keep it in mind in years to come, because this has been an amazing turnaround, to say the least. So on the Boston side, though, you come into the season and you probably got them slotted behind Miami after they had made their moves in the offseason, after they got Kyle Lowry, after they got PJ Tucker. Certainly, we all thought Milwaukee was going to be there. They were going to be right there in the top 4 of that conference. You're going to have them behind Philadelphia. And then how soon we forget that we're going to have them behind Brooklyn. Brooklyn was the odds-on favorite in Vegas to be representing the conference. And so at best, you probably had them 4 or 5 going into the year. Every objective observer. And even when we got to January, and as we've chronicled, they're sitting in like 11th place. I mean, they're not 4 or 5 then. I mean, the idea that we got to January and they weren't good, and now they have had this sustained level of success and they are going to be the Eastern Conference representative in the NBA Finals, that is, no matter what anybody says, and I think even Celtics fans would agree, shocking. If you would have told anyone in January, including the most ardent fan, that this was going to be the finals representative out of the Eastern Conference, nobody would have believed you. No chance. Most Celtics fans were wildly disenchanted with the team. And we were chronicling, we were talking about it every week. About like, hey, maybe they should break this thing up. Where is this thing going? Maybe Brad Stevens moving to the front office and Ime Udoka being a first-time coach wasn't the best thing for a team that has been winning and had some playoff reps already. And their ascent post-January is shocking. And I also think it's something that's one of those we've got to keep it in mind in years to come, because this has been an amazing turnaround, to say the least.
I mean, it's interesting you just say that right there, Chris, about keeping it in mind in years to come. If not to jump too far ahead when we have the NBA Finals to preview, but that thought is so interesting because the season is becoming more about, parts. If they do install the in-season tournament, the beginning of the season is going to lead into that, right? It still counts towards season standings, but then you're going to have the rest of the year towards playoffs and everything else, where like October, November, December, January for that matter, it doesn't matter as much in terms of assessing, does this team have a chance to make it to the NBA Finals? What's going to matter is what happens February around deadline time as you make your changes, you finalize your roster in the lead up to the buyout period. It's February, March, April. As long as you get in, that is worthy of assessment for a team's chances at making the playoffs, because truly, genuinely, everything that happened before then for Boston is irrelevant in terms of analyzing who they are today. It is only part of their story, their amazing story that you're talking about. But
how did it happen?
Become, it doesn't. How did it happen? I mean, it's the type of thing here where I think they found their guys. They made a couple tweaks to the roster with trades. They made some tweaks to the rotation.
Taking Josh Richardson out of the mix, taking a couple guys at the beginning that are out of the mix, and then really paring it down.
Yeah, and they made some systematic tweaks as well. It's system, personnel, and then I think more than anything else, though, Chris, more than anything, it's the players in that locker room, particularly Tatum and Brown, who embraced the change that Udoka was trying to instill in them since early in the year. And that's making the extra pass, not slowing it down as often, playing with each other, playing to make others better, and Tatum becoming the guy. I think Tatum has very clearly established himself as the guy on the roster, and Brown kind of has taken the second number 2 role behind him and done an excellent job within it. But I think more than, and then Marcus Smart, of course, becoming more of a point guard as well. But I think it was really about the acceptance of role from the team's best players more than anything else, and then everything else trickled down from there to work with system, personnel, rotation, all of that work because Tatum and Brown embraced who they have to become.
It's so funny to think back and how just appalling they were with Dennis Schroeder and Josh Richardson, who are not in their own right bad players, right? But like when you think about that version of the Celtics, which appeared this season, they were, we always talk about league pass teams. They were the anti-league pass team. You don't want to watch them. It was a slog, Ime Udoka's calling them out in post-game press conferences. And, it's funny. It's what came to mind as soon as you talked about Marcus Smart being more of a point guard. I think at the beginning of the season, if you would have said, hey, and Marcus Smart's going to fall into the point guard role. And not only is he going to fall into the point guard role, he's going to win Defensive Player of the Year, and he's going to be very, very good at playing this position. Kind of unbelievable that we would be at that point, because you kind of feel like you know what Marcus Smart is. And going into this year, it's like, oh, come on, you don't want Marcus Smart being your full-time point guard. But then he takes over in that role from Schroeder that we saw earlier in the year, and just a different deal. We saw a couple different teams pull this off this year where they really ascended to a different level by just deciding, all right, we know we got 15-guy roster. We trust about 8 or 9, and that's all I'm playing. And really 7 or 8 are going to get the lion's share of the minutes. And we saw with Toronto, they did it. Of course, they petered out at the end. And their guys were playing just an insane amount of minutes. And we saw it with Boston, that, when it came time, when we hit the stretch run, they really did settle on that rotation. All that being said, I could not help but think that Jeff Van Gundy, who was on the call, and my God, I hope he's not bad sick.
Yeah.
I saw you crack the joke on Twitter, but
he didn't sound
he
good.
sounded no energy.
I noticed right away. I was like, what's wrong with his voice? Is that my TV? I legit thought it was my TV. Weird. I really did at first.
That was strange.
Yeah.
And of course, Breen was out. So here's hoping Jeff Van Gundy is okay. He certainly seemed under the weather. Anyways, I've talked to you about years ago. I read this article, and it was, coach draws up a play. They come out of a timeout. They're down by 1. They run the play to perfection. They get an open shot. Shots in the air. Good coach, bad coach, good coach, bad coach, good coach, bad coach. Right? And I couldn't help but think about that, especially when we see a million replays of the Jimmy Butler 3. It's everything that went right for the Heat. It's everything the Heat are all about. It's what happened to Boston, this collapse at the end of the game where they give up an 11-2 run to end the game. And instead, here we are, how did they get there? Marcus Smart, shortened rotation, great job by Ime Udoka, all of these things. And the margins are always so thin, Kev. Game 7 of the Mavericks, Phoenix notwithstanding. But in many cases, the margins are thin, and that ball is in the air for the Jimmy Butler 3, and we can decide who's got it all right. Is it the Heat that have got it all right, or is it the Celtics that have got it all right? And sure enough, it ends with Jimmy Butler missing that shot.